Imagine being the heir to a thriving family business that is worth millions of dollars. And yet, for some reason, you don't want it. You want to build something else that is almost guaranteed to make you broke. Well, this is the story of Kiichiro Toyoda, the founder of Toyota. And trust me, you want to hear the story. So this is Kiichiro, and he's standing in the middle of his family's massive textile factory in Japan. His father, Kiichiro Toyoda, had spent decades building an empire out of one invention, an automatic loom so advanced that if a single thread snapped while weaving silk, the machine would stop itself instantly. It was genius engineering. It eliminated waste, protected quality, and made the Toyoda family incredibly wealthy. To everyone around Kiichiro, the future was quite obvious. Improve the looms, expand the textile empire, and keep making money from silk. But Kiichiro kept looking out the window. Outside the factory, the world was changing. Roads were getting crowded with a strange new machine that Japan barely understood: the automobile. And while the Toyota family had mastered thread and fabric, Kiichiro had become obsessed with something else entirely: engines. So he tells his family something that sounds almost insane at the time. He says he wants to build a Japanese car. To them, this idea is reckless. Japan barely had an auto industry, and American companies like Ford and General Motors were already producing cars by the hundreds of thousands from a place called Detroit. Walking away from a profitable textile empire to compete with Detroit sounded like financial suicide. But Kiichiro was stubborn, and he knew that if he wanted to understand cars, he had to go to the one place on earth that had already solved the problem. So he travels to Detroit. Now imagine him walking through Ford's massive factories in the early 20th century. Assembly lines stretching for miles, thousands of workers, steel, engines and machines moving with military precision. Ford's River Rouge plant alone looked less like a factory and more like an industrial city. At first, Kiichiro is stunned by the skill. Detroit had mastered mass production in a way that the world had never seen before. But the more he studied the system, the more he noticed something strange. The American factories were powerful, but they were also incredibly wasteful. They produced enormous batches of parts and stacked them in warehouses, sometimes letting them sit for weeks before they even used. The system worked because America had endless space, endless materials, and an enormous market. Japan didn't have any of that. Kiichiro realized something critical. Japan could never beat Detroit by trying to be bigger. If his car company was going to survive, then it had to become something else entirely. It had to become tighter. So when he returned to Japan, he started a company called Toyota, where he and his engineers began studying American cars piece by piece. But instead of simply copying Detroit's system, Kiichiro kept thinking about the philosophy he had grown up with in his father's loom factory. Remember that loom that stopped automatically if a thread snapped? Well, what if a factory worked the same way? What if production didn't continue when something was wrong? What if the entire line stopped the moment a defect appeared, forcing workers to fix the problem immediately instead of hiding it for later? That simple idea, stopping production to protect quality, would eventually become one of the core principles of what the world now calls TPS, the Toyota Production System. But just as Toyota was beginning to experiment with car production, disaster struck. World War II left Japan's economy devastated. Cities were destroyed, industries were crippled, and Toyota itself nearly collapsed under the pressure. By the late 1940s, the company was so close to bankruptcy that Kiichiro was forced to step down from leadership. For a moment, it looks like the dream of building a Japanese car company was over. But the engineers inside Toyota didn't abandon the ideas Kiichiro had started. Over the following decades, they refined a completely new way of building cars, a system focused on eliminating waste, improving quality, and producing exactly what was needed at exactly the right time. Instead of giant warehouses full of unused parts, they developed just-in-time manufacturing. Instead of hiding defects, they built systems that stopped production instantly when something went wrong. And instead of relying on sheer size, they relied on constant improvement. Then, in the 1970s, something happened that changed the global auto industry overnight. The oil crisis hit. Gas prices skyrocketed, and suddenly the giant American muscle cars that dominated the roads were expensive to drive and difficult to maintain. Drivers everywhere began looking for smaller, more reliable, fuel-efficient vehicles, and waiting for them was a new generation of cars from Japan, especially from a company called Toyota. Their cars weren't just cheaper, they were built with a level of precision and reliability that surprised the world. The same philosophy that had once stopped the silk loom when a thread snapped had been applied to engines, transmissions, and entire factories. What made these cars different wasn't just the fact that they were smaller or cheaper. Plenty of companies could build a small car. What Toyota had figured out was how to build a small car that almost never broke. And that difference came from the quiet discipline inside their factories. Inside the Toyota plant, workers weren't treated like disposable parts on a giant machine. They were trained to watch the production line like surgeons watching a patient. If something felt wrong, a bolt that didn't sit properly, a panel that didn't align perfectly, any worker could pull a cord and stop the entire assembly line anytime. Now think about how radical that was for a second. In most factories at the time, stopping the line was considered a disaster. Production managers cared about speed above everything else. So if a defect appeared, it was usually pushed further down the line and fixed later. But Toyota did the opposite. They believed that every defect was a signal that something in the system itself was broken. And instead of hiding the problem, they stopped everything until they understood why it happened. It slowed things down in the moment, but over time, something extraordinary happened. The number of defects began to disappear almost entirely. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, Toyota had begun exporting some of its most important cars to global markets. Models like the Toyota Corolla, the Toyota Corolla, and later the Toyota Celica began appearing on roads across Europe and North America. And people noticed something strange about them. These cars just kept running. Owners discovered they could drive them for years with minimal repairs. Engines started reliably in cold winters, parts rarely failed, and fuel consumption was dramatically lower than the V8 engines coming out of Detroit. At first, American manufacturers didn't take this seriously. Detroit had dominated the auto industry for decades, and Japanese cars were seen as small, inexpensive imports, useful for commuters or students, but not serious competition for American engineering. Come on. That was when the oil crisis of 1973 changed everything. Gasoline prices exploded almost overnight, and suddenly the cars from Detroit became painfully expensive to drive. So drivers started looking for alternatives, and sitting quietly on dealership lots were small Japanese cars that could travel hundreds of miles on a fraction of the fuel. The loom maker's son hadn't just built a car company. He had helped build a manufacturing system that was so efficient that decades later, the same American companies that once dominated Detroit would begin studying it, copying it, and even teaching it in their own factories. What started in a sole factory had quietly rewritten the rules of the global auto industry. My name is Derek, and this is Success Stories of Famous Brands and Famous People. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow, like, comment, and share this video. See you in the next one.